Well, hello, community builders. Welcome back. We're on episode 6 of series 4. So it's lovely to have you all here today on a Thursday afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. I've just popped into the chat now, a little test for your system. So always makes sense to make sure everything's working for you. Internet, audio, visual, all of it. If you click that link, it will tell you that everything's compatible, or if there's a problem and you can get it fixed. Kirsten from Denmark in Europe. I always wonder, what time of day is it when you join us? Lovely to see you back here. And welcome everyone else. We've got a real treat for you today. I've so enjoyed 6 a.m. God, you're a committed community builder. Beryl at lovely Lockington, great to see you. Jeffrey from Thailand, wonderful to have you all on here today. My name's Lindsay Douglas and I'm in a little hamlet called O'Connell in the central west of New South Wales. It's about 30 minutes from the reasonably sized regional city of Bathurst and about the same distance to the little town of Oberon. Lovely to have you all here anyway. And as we are joining on, I'd love you to tell me what the temperature is there today, because we have had this wild freezing wind hit us in the last couple of hours. So I'm curious to know what it's like there. So I've had to put a big jacket on today because it's even cold inside the house. But as I mentioned, my name's Lindsay Douglas. I'll be your host today, and lovely to see you on here. Oh, Heather from Condobolin. I didn't know you were from Horsham. You were going to love today's session. Condobolin also has a great little agricultural show. But today it's all about the Horsham Show because, well, they have run an absolute cracker in recent times and they've evolved to do different things as well. Look, we wouldn't be here without Rural Aid, Bank of Ideas, but also this great company, which is Holdmark. They're a property developer based in Sydney, and they've built beautiful developments and communities all over Sydney. And they really get behind the idea of community, and that's why they've gotten behind the Community Builders Initiative this year. Glenda from the Riverina in New South Wales. Whereabouts, Glenda? Great to have you here. Belinda from Gunning. I love Gunning. What an adorable town. And it's soggy on the Central Coast. Interesting to hear. 24 degrees in Kyneton. And Glenda's from New Temora. Well, wonderful to have you all here, and great to be back as a community. As I mentioned before, I'm just so excited about today's session for a number of reasons. It's a wonderful example of community building, but also I spend my weekends announcing at ag shows, so I get to see all the innovation and the collaboration and the community spirit that comes through at an ag show. And some of them are really thriving and innovating, and they're colourful and they're wonderful, and others are struggling. So we're excited to share this story with you today of what Horsham have done. Oh, it's 80% humidity in Thailand and 32 degrees in Pengelly. No, thank you, Tracy. Oh, lovely to see you all. Anyway, so today we, of course, record our sessions. We put them up on the website. We also put them in our Facebook group. I'm going to pop our Facebook group connection on for you now to join. Where is it? There it is. So if you haven't joined our Facebook group, please do. It's where we share all sorts of resources, and we all get together outside of the 1 hour once a week here on the Community Builders website. We acknowledge the traditional owners Australia-wide for their continuous connection to the land. We pay our respects to our elders, past, present and emerging, wherever you are in Australia. I'm here in Wiradjuri country in New South Wales. You'll see that chat panel. Please use it. Please throw us questions today. It's a wonderful interactive medium for us when we can't all get together, not just because of COVID, but because community builders can be anywhere in Australia or the world. And this is our forum to actually communicate. So please ask your questions, throw your ideas in, tell us about your anecdote and how it relates to today's topic. Well, this series, if you haven't joined us before, is all about the reinvention of country towns. And we wanted to celebrate where communities have come up with big ideas, outrageous ideas, and made them work. Last week we looked at owning the local power grid, owning energy sources and the economic benefits that can bring to a community. If that isn't an outrageous idea, I don't know what is. And it was really well received by our community builders here. We've talked about the importance of engaging with our Indigenous heritage. We've talked about how we can use the spare walls in our communities to become art galleries, and the town of Sheffield in Tasmania that has done that so successfully. We're going to be talking in future weeks about assets in your community, adding value through agricultural products. But today we're talking about revitalising our country shows. So This next gentleman needs no introduction, but Peter Kenyon from Bank of Ideas has helped over 2,000 communities with their community building for over 35 years. Peter today is going to take us on a bit of a journey through the revitalisation of towns that he's been affiliated with over the years. Welcome to you, Peter, and I'll hand over to you now.
Good afternoon, Lindsay, and to everyone. I'm back in my own home base in the beautiful little community of Kalamunda, and that is Noongar country, and it's just great to be home. But last week I was in the Riverina, and boy, there's some stunning towns there. And boy, was it a great learning experience to interact with a whole pile of people. And this week, as we focus on the use of special events as a way to kind of like be more than that dot on the map, I thought of three kind of like towns from three different states I'd love to just highlight. And certainly the first one is a place that I drove through. I had breakfast. I interacted with a number of locals there. And it's that great little town of 8,000 people called Denny or Dililoquin. I just love it as you drive. The sign just kind of like grabs you from kind of like kilometres out. And everyone's aware that this is the town, back 21 years ago when there was the drought and people had to think outside the box, a group of passionate kind of like locals came together and thought, what is it we could do? At the time, they employed a young woman called Liz, who today actually happens to be the CEO of Regional Australia Institute. And Liz was then a 21-year-old who, that was her hometown. She'd come back, and as a festival director, they introduced this thing called the Denny kind of like Ute Muster. What they simply did was to take an iconic part of rural Australia, the Ute, and begin to create a whole festival around it. It's wonderful to go onto their website. It's wonderful to have a look at that beautiful YouTube they put together. And I love when they say, what's it all about? Well, really, they say it's three things. It's about fun, it's about dirt, and it's about drinking. Well, I think it's a lot more as well, but those three things certainly make a great difference. This event attracts around 20,000 people. It's been running for 21 years and it's just constantly grown. And what I love is the way that it's not just a one-off event that influences the town and obviously generates income, but the way it's also added to particularly the public art into the town and the way that people have added to it. I had an opportunity to just try and have a bit of a look at the site when I was there last week. And again, unbelievable what they've actually created there. And the latest thing they've added to that is a Ute kind of like muster museum, which obviously highlights and portrays the importance of the Ute in kind of like rural Australia. But this event has just been amazing. It's full of a whole pile of things to do with the Ute, but obviously all about people being interactive. It's got a massive music program attached to it, appeals to kind of like families, lots of kind of like things that really appeal to everyone. Obviously, it was an event that was cancelled last year, but it's coming back this year, and it is the 21st year for it. And it all started, as I said, with a group of people who decided to kind of like come together and create something that'd be more than a dot on the map. And listening to the locals and listening to Liz Ritchie, who was that first program director, she said, you know what, we discovered there were three elements we had to focus on. We had to have a vision, we had to have a bold idea, and we had to have innumerable beating hearts full of passion. And I love that particular statement. So if you've got an opportunity, don't miss this. It is one of the great kind of like events. It's again, in many ways, a variation of kind of like that field day. And it's just an amazing thing to actually have a look at. The second community that I just wanted to focus on was out of Carrick in Tasmania, and this is where AgFest. Now, this is an event that's held in May every year. It started as a 2-day event. It's grown into not just a 4-day, what they call paddock event, but one of the implications of COVID was last year they decided to take it globally and create what they call their cloud event, where they actually, following their 4-day paddock event, made it available for a further 7 days. And boy, that attracted over 1 million international viewers who hit their pages and had a look at all of their particular material. Now, what I love about this particular event is the history of it. It dates back about 37 years when, like all states of Australia, there was this organisation called the Rural Youth kind of like movement. It was often funded by the state governments, and like everywhere else, the state government eventually said, sorry, we're cutting out the kind of like funding for it. And as a way of continuing this organisation and paying for the organisation, they decided to create an event. And initially it was just out of the little town of Perth in Tassie. And then a couple of years later, they purchased 200 acres in the town of Carrick, just near Launceston. And each year, this kind of like event, it attracts up to 65,000 people on the ground. And now that they've added the cloud component, it's kind of like taken it even further. Amazing kind of like results, totally self-sustaining. In fact, this event funds 6 full-time staff now of the Rural Youth Movement. And if I'm right, it's about the only state left that actually has a paid secretariat to run this organisation called Rural Youth. And it's all because of this amazing event. So again, if you're around in May in Tasmania, this is an event not to actually miss. 700 exhibitors. There will be up to 60,000 people coming over those 4 days. And as I said, they've decided to take it globally. And that, again, is one great outcome that we've seen come out of the COVID kind of like event. And my final event is the lovely little town of Wagen in the wheat belt of WA, town of about 800 people. This is a town that from 1901 had its traditional agricultural show. But by the 70s, that show was fairly tired. And there was a fellow then who decided to actually visit another kind of like well-known event and in the state, and he went to the Dowran Field Day, again another wonderful West Australian rural institution, and he was inspired by that. And he drove back and said, you know what, we need to kind of like package this differently. And he had an interesting way to do it. He actually decided to run a competition with school students to come up with a new name. And 2 boys, one called Peter Jenkin, the other called Mark English. Peter was 9, Mark was 10, came up with a new name. They said, you know what, we're wool country. Why don't we move from being the agricultural Wagen and District Agricultural Show, bit tired like everyone else, why don't we become unique about what we've got as a key asset? And they suggested the Woolorama. The other thing that was suggested that was interesting is that, look, everyone said to have a show in that spring period. Why don't we move it to autumn when no one has a show? And I love those 2 things, change of kind of like focus and name, change of location. It went to the committee, 6 on the committee, and the chair 3-3 in terms of do we change or not. The chair had the casting vote. He decided to go for change. The 3 who lost immediately left the meeting. I think one of them even went to a lawyer to see if they could stop it actually happening, but they pushed ahead. And today there wouldn't be anyone who wouldn't say the decision we made back there in the 70s when we moved from being just that agricultural show to this other thing wasn't a smart move. And boy, has that had a huge impact upon Wagen. It's very much part of the reinvention of this particular town, but a wonderful story and the way that that had engaged young people, creativity, got people involved. And boy, it's ended up being one of the great kind of like rural events of Western Australia. So Lindsay, there are just 3 great examples of what's actually happening, 3 great events, 3 great stories. I encourage everyone, if you've got a chance, get out and visit each of them. They're worth seeing.
It's a delight to have a bit of a tour around Australia with the events and the communities that you know about. And that leads us beautifully into today's story of reinvention of a small town. It's not a terribly small town. It's the community of Horsham in Western Victoria. And like every other agricultural show in Australia, of which there are nearly 600, this one couldn't go ahead in 2020 because of COVID. And Andrea Cross from the Horsham Show Society joins us here today. Welcome, Andrea. I wonder if I could get you to start by making the presumption that no one on this call has ever been to Horsham, even though there's people on here from Horsham, and tell us a bit about the community, the history of the show, and give us a bit of a sense of the context of today's story.
Well, it's a big story, Lindsay, so I hope everyone has got a coffee in their hand so that they can stay awake through the next 20 minutes of me talking. But our first show was held on Wednesday, the 2nd of August, 1876. So that's like 145 years ago this year. But like most shows during the Second World War, they didn't go ahead. So we're celebrating, we don't know what year we're celebrating this year, because what was last year, you know, do we count it or don't we count it? So as you can see in the photo, we cover a fairly big space, but years ago, what you see there on the right-hand side, it wasn't even used. That was where the horses used to camp. And the arena that you see on the left, that's where all the action happened. And so in the last 2 years, we've actually changed the look of our show, the location of our show, that it runs in a completely different sort of space than it has traditionally. So we are known for breaking a few rules.
So you get quite a good crowd being from a bigger regional town along to your show, and it must have been a pretty difficult moment when you realised there wasn't going to be a real Horsham show in 2020. How did you decide to do a virtual show? What was the thinking behind that?
Thought that would be a good idea. However, I was always a big believer in keeping our community connected. So we have an average of about 3,000 people attend our show annually. And how was I going to hold those people? You know, there was so much, I guess at the time, you know, that first lockdown that we had, there was a lot of disillusionment, disappointment and sadness, and mental health, you know, started to take its toll. And I could see that there was an opportunity that we really needed to capitalise on, and keeping the community connected through a virtual event was the next best thing to do. So in doing that, I started creating what a schedule could look like. Instead of having, you know, 500 competitions, I'd cut it down to 50. And well, then that grew to 100. But in talking to Amy from Show Day Online from New Zealand, who runs our website for taking the entries, she told me that in Fred's Pass in Northern Territory, they were planning a virtual show. So I got on the phone to them straight away and I said, hey, girls, what are you doing up there? I want to know everything. And they were just as raw as what I was, but it was just so good to speak to like-minded people.
So you've decided, you know, we can't get people through the gate. We can't get together. Victoria's in lockdown. Everyone's feeling pretty rotten about it. We're going to run an online show. How do you run a competition for like cattle or sheep or cakes or crafts without a showground and a physical judge to look at everything? Describe that to us.
So if I look back and think about where we were at the time, we knew that it was only going to be by photos. So everybody was on a level playing field. And I was originally thinking craft work and cakes, you know, you can take a photo of that. But at the same time, while we were in lockdown, and as we can see in this photo here, families were already at home doing things together that they hadn't done before. So they were making and baking and creating. And so I thought, let's grab photos of what they're making, baking and creating and get them to send them in. So, you know, we ended up with over 500 entries. And we launched on the 1st of May. So this show went for 5 months. So launching on the 1st of May, we had started with Facebook challenges. So for the month of May, we did, like that's a photo of me taking some biscuits I'd just made out into the paddock, you know, so authentic. So, you know, it were those sort of things that I could relate to what was happening in our community at the time. And then the following month was the same challenges, but I wanted people to put in black and white photos, so monochrome photos, just to, you know, just change it up a little bit. And then following that, on the 1st of July, I think, we launched, I think it was the show bag competition. So one of the show bag operators that we worked with, he rang and said, Andrea, I see you're doing a virtual show. How about we offer $100 worth of show bags for your next show? And I said, yeah, let's do that. So that was an easy one. We also did a Rebus challenge. Now, I don't know if many of you know what a Rebus challenge is, because I sure didn't. And so to go through that is you know, mixing words together that you have to try and deliver. So that was a great opportunity to keep people together. And we had a really good, prize for that. You know, we had 3 prizes. So sometimes it was the prizes, but mind you, if I can just say, Lindsay, that all of our prizes, all of the winners, all won $10. Now, we don't normally have that at our show. There's only special sections that win prizes and money, but everyone who won first prize got $10. So we had a sponsor. So if we look at who our sponsors were at the beginning, like last year we had 84 sponsors to help run our show. This year we had 6, or last year we had 6. So dropped significantly. So
I can understand why. Sorry, just to jump in on you there, but I can understand why normal sponsors of the actual show would say, well, we're not going to get behind a virtual show. But that is extraordinary that you still got 6 companies to come on board and get involved with the competition.
$1,500, which was like, that's more than what we normally charge. You know, our biggest sponsorships are $1,000. So how incredible was that? But you know, there were businesses throughout lockdown that didn't suffer like many others did, and we know it's certainly in Victoria and in our region here that the agricultural industry didn't take a backward step, and the building industry either. It really was retail and hospitality and events, of course. Can't forget the events. So where were we up to in the story? Can we perhaps go on to the next slide? Yes. Okay. Talk about the competitions. So you know, of course, we had to have a mask competition. You know, that was a no-brainer. But the competitions that we had, who was going to judge them? You know, I didn't know. I couldn't think about how do we go about getting people to judge competitions. And if I can just talk about this slide for a moment, this was one competition that we hooked up with another event that had to go virtual as well. And we made rag rugs out of recycled material. And at that webinar that they organised, that I could just turn up at, there were people from across the world making rag rugs. And all they needed to do was take a photo of their rag rug and enter it in our show. So it went to prove that people anywhere in the world could enter a show if they knew about it. And it was all about the fun. So that element was really incredibly popular. And then, you know, people started, you know, putting in their competition photos. And, you know, there were some gorgeous photos that came through. I mean, everybody loves an animal, don't they? And so look at this guy here. He's got a tattoo on his arm here, and he's made a decorated Marie biscuit, which, by the way, was the biggest, that had the most entries. We had 34 entries because it wasn't delegated to school-age students or, you know, under 5 or whatever. It was open for everyone, and I just encourage anyone who runs a show to open that Marie biscuit competition, because it fed my needs.
Who entered your competitions? Was it the normal people that come to shows and come along every year and get involved in the whole program, or did you attract a different audience?
So allow me just for a moment to look at our stats on that. So out of 91 competitors who put in 508 entries, 71 were first-time entrants of our show. So what that proved to me was that a lot of our regular followers, they didn't take up the opportunity. You know, for whatever reason, it may have just been too complicated to take a photo and email it in. But for 71 new entrants to be added to our database is absolutely fantastic. Like, what a great opportunity that was. Our just some other stats from there. The entry, the longest distance from the furthest entrant was 438 kilometres away. So we didn't quite hit overseas, but you know, 438 kilometres is a fair way. 3 generations in one family competed. Another stat is 12 competitors entered one competition and won. So they had a 100% success rate. 5 competitors entered 2 entries and won first. So there's another 100% success rate. And as I said before, the decorated Murray biscuits, 34 entries in that, and I love that. A single family with the most entries was 64. So just think about that for a moment. You're in lockdown, you've got 3 kids at home. It's like, what are we going to do now, Mum? So it's like, let's take a photo of the chook, let's take a photo of the cat, let's decorate a Murray biscuit. There was like 100 competitions or classes that they could enter. And there was one individual who had the most entries. She entered 19 classes. And that just blows my mind, because the amount of time that it takes to do that is quite incredible. We only had one school enter, but they entered more than 70 classes. And so that was, normally we have better support from schools, but we didn't have a sewing competition this year. But realistically, it engaged a whole new audience, and it did re-engage an older audience, and it brought families together throughout this time. So, you just need to look at the work that's gone into, and if I can just pick out those orange decorated cupcakes, the woman who won that prize, she actually won ABC Radio's. They had a virtual competition about a week before ours, and she won that from across Victoria. So Robin was a very worthy winner of our first competition as well. But our judge was from Melbourne, who judged all our cupcakes and our decorated Murray biscuits. And she's a professional cake decorating judge. So she loved doing that. So just going back to what we did previously. So we had the show bags online, and then on the 1st of August, that's right, we launched our virtual market. And if people want to go to the Horsham Show website now, tomorrow, or whenever, we are still running that virtual market through our website. And that was a very simple process to do. And it kept, if people wanted to go shopping on show day, that was sort of my take on it. If you want to go shopping, it was there, but it's actually up online.
So you ran competitions. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
I've got a bit of a delay here. No, I did want to ask you about, you ran competitions like a normal ag show in a sense. You reconfigured the schedule and you made it so that people could engage virtually, and you had a judge come in from Ireland and all over the world to judge them remotely and film their judging. And then you've gone ahead and said, well, let's run a virtual market like we would have run, that's still going today. And you did so much more on top of show bags and other activities. I was just really about to ask you to walk us through some of them, and some of them are on our screen now. Oh, we've lost Andrea's audio. At least I have at my end. There we go.
In September, this is the 4th year in a row that we've been involved in the Digital Innovation Festival. And this year we developed the Ag Lab, and that was part of, we put that as part of our show, I guess, marketing. So on our website, we've got videos that we made and how we made them, and just a little bit of detail. And that festival, we were really fortunate to be part of that festival, because it grew our marketers, our followers as well. Also in September, it was the Rebus challenge that I was talking about before. So that's just, who can guess that one on the bottom? Yeah, on time, and long johns and things like that. So just a little bit of fun and great opportunity. So I've skipped over to the media page now. Yeah, we didn't spend a single cent on getting this virtual event out there in the community. It was all about how we can connect in other ways. And look, I was fortunate that, I don't mind talking, obviously. And I spoke with Neil Mitchell on 3AW, talked about our virtual show in the very early days, just a phone call and the same with Libby Gore and a few on ABC Radio. So to be able to hit sound waves with Macca on Australia all over. He did a pre-recorded interview with me, and as I said, like, we didn't spend any money. So that was a really important part, because we didn't have any money to spend. Let's be honest, there weren't people that were going to come through the gate, so we had to make the best of what we had. And like I spoke to you before about the sponsors, you know, even though there were only 6, we valued them so much. And so as part of our virtual show on actual show day, which was September the 26th, they had an opportunity to be showcased, and they will forever go down in history as being a sponsor of the Horsham Show. So that's important. I might just swing to some of our videos. Maybe if we have a little quick look at the judging that we had from overseas. So I talked before about having a Melbourne judge our cupcakes, but we actually connected with Carolyn from the Irish Show Association, and they had just run a virtual show. So, you know, beautiful computers and technology. I just messaged her and said, hi, do you want to judge our scarecrow competition, or whatever it was, might have been our craft? And she said, sure thing. So we did that through Zoom, and I recorded that, and that then I edited.
Andrea, we've just shared the footage with everyone because the file was a bit too big for the load to work just before we went live. But what I did think we could show is that you actually built an experience of a show online with things like the fashion parade and a music concert and all of the various elements of a show. What are some? You had a virtual welcome. You even had your local Minister for Primary Industries do a welcome to the show. But I might play a bit of your animal nursery, if that's okay, and you can walk us through how that was run.
Obviously the very beginning of the animal nursery, but my son has been running the animal nursery since he was 12, and so he obviously has lots of animals on his farm. So I took the camera out there and we recorded all of his animals, and he actually talked about his animals and his incubators and his breeding and his genetics and of all the animals. So it was a great opportunity for people to for young families even to see what animals we have locally, and to have some story behind them, some story background behind them.
Fashion show.
Our fashion parade was really simply done, and I just contacted some of our local boutiques and said, send me in 6 photos, I'll make a fashion parade. And that was like an 8-minute interlude. So on show day, if I can perhaps go to that now, Lindsay, talking about how show day actually happened. So after 5 months of all this intensity, we posted 100 where we scheduled 100 posts for Facebook the night before, well, actually it was up till 6 a.m. that morning. The thing is with Facebook, you can't post more than 100 posts a day. And let's be honest, who in their right mind would post 100 posts a day? But we took on the challenge. We didn't blow Facebook up. I was a little bit worried that we might have shorted out some sort of electrical circuit, but we didn't. And once the announcement of winners, if we looked at the program, you know, we had the official opening, we had the Minister for Agriculture, you know, welcome everybody, and every 5 minutes we posted who won whatever section, and if there was a video to put with it, then that became the next 5 minutes, and then we'd throw in a judge, a sponsor's thank you, and then we'd throw in, you know, maybe the music concert, or we'd throw in the virtual market. So, you know, there were ads going all day. So as those Facebook posts got used, we were able to, we had 118 that we had to upload. So the last 18 we had to do on the day. So people could just sit, and they did. They just sat and they just kept clicking refresh. They'd go and get something to eat. They'd come back and they'd see what else, if they'd won anything or if their friend had won anything. But like everything was a highlight that day. Like there was nothing that wasn't a highlight. And initially I was imagining myself sitting watching the show, and that did not happen, let me just say. But one of the major highlights was a video that we transferred into an MP3, and I posted that at maybe 8 o'clock at night, might have been 8:30, and over how many people saw that? I don't know, but it went to London within 8 minutes, and like thousands of people, 16,000 people watched it, and it was a great connector for people who.
And what was that video,
for
Andrea?
40 years. It was a copy of our 100th show. So the first person I saw on it was, here we go, it was my mother's auntie, like, there's my cousin. And I'm like going, oh my gosh, where did this come from? So there were people who were in that movie, you know, like Leon Toy, who's one of our Chinese community, who's had a Chinese restaurant since, you know, I was a girl. And people were tagging each other. I think I saw you in that video. And that's just how it grew so many legs. And it was just, that was just such a great thing.
You can see how people would love watching this and finding themselves or people they know from the 100th show in it. I'm curious to know, we often talk about social media on here and how important digital connection is now in regional communities to draw in our own communities and people that are tourists. You did a couple of really interesting things that I think share insights with the rest of us. One is that a piece of footage like this that's nostalgic and for all intents and purposes should never have done well on social media, got 16,000 likes, went global in a matter of minutes, and was incredibly successful for you. You posted 100 pieces of content or more in one single day and didn't deter people. In fact, it engaged more of them. I wondered, Andrea, could you walk us through just how successful the social media content campaign was, what it cost you to do, and if you could compare it to another show audience to give us sort of a platform for context, that'd be really useful.
I will refer to my notes here because I can't remember everything, and I'm so glad that I took notes the week after the event. So when we announced our show was going to cancel, and if I can just say, at that point, I sort of always had a feeling early on that we would do something different, and it took me a long time. It took us till May to announce that our show was cancelled, but at the same time, we announced a virtual show. So people didn't sort of go, oh, and then go, ah. So it was intentional to do it like that. But since we cancelled our show, we've received over 500 likes on our page. So we have about 3,500 people who like our page. So that in itself, to get 500 new likes was phenomenal. The virtual show itself it reached over 34,000 people. And I know that that's not millions that Peter referred to before with one of his comments, but for us, 34,000 people is a whole lot, and over 25,000 post engagements. So for each one of those 118 posts, there was, I haven't got this written down, but it attracted over 800 people to actually write or make a comment. And if we're to compare to a much bigger show than ours, and I will take the Royal Melbourne Show in that, they ran a virtual show over 11 days, and their show always overlaps our show. So they start before us, they are during us, and they are following us. So obviously Melbourne, they've got like 109,000 followers. We've got 3.5. Their engagement over show week was 36,000, but ours was 19,000. Just remembering those followers, we're talking 109 and 3.5 thousand. And so we almost halved, we had, like, I don't know, I'm not good with maths, Lindsay, but it was pretty good. We were happy with that. In terms of our total page likes during show or following show week, theirs were 0.2%, and we were up 2.2%. So those figures alone demonstrate to me that it was worth it. Yes, we didn't make any money, but it wasn't about the money. It was about connecting to our community, to our broader community, and I'm here today still talking about it. So, like, you know, there's people from Thailand on the webinar today. So that just blows my mind that this is still going on. So
well, I think every show wishes they had an Andrea Cross, and there were lots of shows that ran a version of a virtual show, but certainly nothing to the extent of yours, where there was a full show day experience that was, you could sit and just be part of the show with a fashion parade and music and cake decorating and crafts, and your local Minister for Primary Industries announcing awards and you on there walking people through it, and then ads from your sponsors, and then you had your show president come on and do a live opening. You did your best to make a show and bring people into the community. And the success, I feel, for me, is that you brought in people that weren't already part of your show that hopefully will actually attend the show in years to come. But that is not the end of the story, because you just said something quite important there about we didn't make any money. And that's okay, but we didn't make any money. You still have to make money to make a show society successful. So you didn't stop there as a committee and say, oh, we've run a great Facebook campaign, thank you very much, we'll just go and rest on our laurels now, and accept some big awards, by the way. You won Community Event of the Year, your show president won Community Individual of the Year, so you've been certainly recognised for it, but you decided you had to make money. Walk us through this next initiative. Oh, hold on, audio's not caught up.
Award for a community event the year before. As part of the change to our show, we weren't nominated for an award for this last year, but we don't need to win an award to know that you know, what we did was worthwhile for our community. And yes, Zach did win Young Citizen of the Year that particular year, so that was great for us as well.
You had to make money, so you came up with another idea.
Oh, of course. So this idea actually happened in April. So I've got two trains going here. I've got a show train and I've got a 150-kilometre feast train, and it's all because I spoke to those girls at Fred's Pass. So those girls in Northern Territory, they know how to do things, and so they actually run a 50-kilometre feast, and they source their food within 50 kilometres. So they have barramundi and crocodile and all the good things from up north. And I said to them, I said, that's a good idea. I'd like to steal it. Do you mind? And they said, no, not at all. Just take it, run with it. We run it every year before, the night before our show, and they need a medal just for that. And they said, just don't steal our logo. And I said, oh, no, I wouldn't do that. So we developed, over the last nearly 12 months, we developed the 150-kilometre feast, which Look, we're really fortunate in our location of our showgrounds. We're right on the Wimmera River. Our council is currently working really hard to activate our river precinct. And while they're working really hard to do it, we're actually doing it, and that's okay. So we developed this feast to source food and wine and services within 150 kilometres of Horsham. And also to say thanks to our farmers and our agriculturalists who have kept us, kept us fed and watered throughout the lockdown particularly. So that was the reason behind the 150 kilometre feast, and we had to make money. So we sold tickets at $150 a ticket, and it sold out. It was virtually sold out before it went on sale. So last minute I thought, we need to do 2 nights. We need to do 2 events. And I said to the chefs, can we do 2 nights? And they said, yeah, sure, why not? So that the event itself sold out within 32 hours. And that was amazing. So these are just some photos of our historical rustic precinct, which, we just love. We're passionate about our precinct. But here's what a hay bale styled dining room looks like. So the bales were 4 bales high, and they covered made 2 walls out of them. This is what 150 plates, 155. We actually went over the 150 people. We had 155, and that's what 155 plates looks like. That was for entree. So this is a little bit more of what it looked like, and it was such a community collaboration. Like those umbrellas, I was having visions of making Hessian ceilings, and that was just not going to happen. So the last minute, I rang the racing club and said, have you got any umbrellas we can borrow? And they said, sure, we've got 30. And we absolutely needed every one of those 30 umbrellas. We engaged with one of our local training providers, and they trained all the staff from multicultural backgrounds, people with disabilities, and with our committee as well. And that was a fantastic, it was just a fantastic response. We had, I think, 60 volunteers over the 2 nights. Can I just say that Victoria went into a 5-day circuit breaker lockdown the week before, 2 weeks before our event, and we didn't know how we were going to pull this event off without, we lost 5 days of production time in terms of setting up. So during that lockdown, we had to make a decision what we were going to do. We were going to cancel one night when people had bought all these tickets, and we decided that we'd go back to back. So we did a Saturday night and a Sunday night. So these volunteers, instead of having a week's break in between events, they went from one event and went home tired. They came back the next day and they volunteered again the very next day. That was a huge it was a huge response, but it was a huge reaction to what could have been, I don't know, avoided maybe, I don't know. Let's not go there. So the people arrived, and here they are lining up because we just weren't quite ready at 6 o'clock, but we were very close. But, it made them want to, get in through the gate. And the weather was absolutely perfect the first night. The second night, it was windy, but still warm. So, the weather in Victoria can be, a little bit interchangeable from one day to another. But, this autumn weather was upon us, and the old tin bath held the ice, which held the champagne glasses. So people grabbed their champagne glass on arrival. Here's some more photos of the food being prepped. So it was all pre-prepared, and then outside on the night, the meat was cooked on barbecues by chefs and cooks and tasted absolutely amazing. And everything was branded with 150 kilometres. My husband cut all those little pieces of timber for the tables, and also for the charcuterie boards. He cut like 170 of them, so it's lucky we're still married. But anyway, we are, and that's okay. And all our aprons were branded, our T-shirts were branded for the staff, and it really came together so perfectly well. This is Stewie on the left here, cooking up a treat with slow-cooked, seared, pulled pork, terrine, barbecued. It was amazing, and Stoff he just launched his beer brewery. So he used our event as his kickoff. And here's just some photos of, you know, nighttime, daytime decorations and the people and the lights and just the whole fun of the whole event. Like, it was just amazing. This photo is the end of the night. The one on the right is on Saturday night, where there were a few younger volunteers washing dishes in our single sink with, someone forgot to turn the hot water on. The photo on the left is our volunteers. The little gentleman with the grey hair, the white hair, he's 91, and he came in at 7 o'clock, and I said, you can stay for 1 hour. He stayed till midnight with the others who were average age of 85, and they had the best night. They laughed and they carried on like pork chops in the background. So it was just a wonderful experience.
Well, Andrea, I'm curious to know that it looked like such a great event, and I would definitely buy tickets if you hold one again in the future. But the question everyone wants to know the answer to is, did you make any money? Because you sold tickets for how much?
Yes. Tickets were $150 each. So, you know, that was pretty good. And then we had some sponsors donate money as well. And yeah, look, we haven't crunched the final numbers, but let's just say it was definitely worth it. And we're going to do it again next year, but we're just going to do one night next year, just one night. One night in February, around about the 19th of February, I think we've got it booked in for. So definitely doing it again, and just want to thank so many people who were involved in making it happen. And it's the volunteers that support our communities that make things happen.
Absolutely right. One of the things I love about your approach in the last 12 months with your committee is, one, you created, so many shows just didn't happen last year, and that has, I've got a cat here that won't stop coming up on this podcast, so I'm trying to get it away, but they don't communicate with ESP. So I love that you actually brought your community together when so many shows just couldn't hold a show, and so didn't have the community engagement that a show provides, that is so crucial to agricultural communities and the fabric of any town. But the second element is that so many shows are hurting at the moment because they couldn't have made any money last year, and they actually cost them money to not run a show because they already had contracts out. What really inspires me about what you've done is that you've gone about using the show society, the volunteers, the people that are behind it, the resources, your showground, and agriculture to run another very successful event. And I'm going to do what Sharon said and introduce you to my cat. This is Phoebe. She's actually a farm cat that kills snakes, but she snuck into the house somehow. So Sharon, there she is. But Andrea, the question I had for you is, it doesn't stop here with this feast and running it again next year. Your show society is talking about leveraging that asset you have to run sheep shows, to run a bar that people can come to, so people can start to see the showground as a venue. Can you walk us through some of those plans you've been mulling over with the committee?
So the greatest thing we all have across Australia is the opportunity to showcase what we've got. When we work with things every day, we don't see the beauty and the treasure that we hold. And for us, it's about tourism now. We've never touched on tourism. It hasn't been our thing. But you saw those photos of our rustic showgrounds. You know, we did another thing at the 150-kilometre feast. We did self-guided tours. So people are coming to our precinct now, and the idea is that anybody who puts on a show, you must put it on the Australian Tourism Data Warehouse, because when people Google what's to do in Horsham, our events come up. This weekend we're running Victoria's first sheep show, merino sheep show, since COVID. Now, it's been 15 months since these people have shown sheep, and we've got over 16 studs represented. And we're running a yard dog trial. We've got 50 yard dogs already booked in. We've got a fleece competition. Our new bar is open. We've even built a bar since the 28th of February, since the feast. We've built a new bar. We've actually converted the horse wash into a bar. But these are the things that can be done, and we just have to look at what we've got, because people are travelling within Australia. They're getting on planes. They are coming to see us. So we need
That's
to be
a great
ready,
point to end that question on. And I wondered, you've shared with us the Australian Tourism Data Warehouse. Do you have any other bits of advice for community event organisers or people working on an initiative that's got tourism related to it and relies on a bit of social media? What would your advice be to other towns in Australia and beyond?
Well in your what's working well for tourism. And I only learned this the other day, but in Victoria we've got a silo art trail. So our big silos have all been painted with amazing portraits of local people. And I was in a little town 30 minutes away, and the girl who had the coffee van said, Andrea, you need to tag your posts, hashtag Silo Art Trail. That's what's relevant to our community here. She did that on her social media. She got 15 people from New South Wales in caravans waiting for coffee for her to open on Sunday morning. So the key is to find out what it is. If you're not the tourist place, you know, if you don't have the museum, or if you don't, but if you know who does and it's really popular, hashtag that in your social media and it will draw the crowds.
For us all. Andrea, I've so enjoyed having you on the program today. I wish every show had an Andrea Cross. We've got a little tradition here on the Community Builders series where, because we can't actually applaud you and say thank you, what a legend you are, we can use our emojis instead. So if you can see the chat section, everyone will jump in now and demonstrate via emoji how they feel about your session today. We're seeing a lot of hearts. We're seeing a bunch of claps. We're seeing thumbs ups. We're seeing, I think it's poppers. So the community here wish to thank you. Oh, I've got you on mute again, my apologies. But it's been an absolute joy to talk to you about the many initiatives of the Horsham Agricultural Show Society. So thank you so much for giving up your time and joining us today.
And the Community Builders, what a fabulous
series. It is good
series
fun, isn't it?
is.
And it's a great session next week too. We are talking about agricultural products and reinventing them. Sharon is saying, can we call you Andrea? And the answer is, you just Google the Horsham Agricultural Show website and you'll get the office number there. And I'd be very surprised if Andrea's not in there most days. So Sharon, you can call that office. But we look forward to seeing you all same time, same place next week, where we are going to be talking licorice, which is one of my favourite things to eat and has certainly reinvented a small community in Australia. Once again, a huge thank you to all of you for your support of Rural Aid and Bank of Ideas. And that's where we're heading next week, the little picture on your screen. Also, you can support Rural Aid by supporting these businesses. And Rural Aid do great things like run these live chats for starters. They help farmers with drought and water and fodder and finances and counselling, and they're just an extraordinary organisation, so you can get behind them just supporting these guys. But in the meantime, stay safe, keep building in your communities. We wish you all the best, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye, everyone.